who tried to turn hope in something real. The people who stood between war and peace and chose peace. The people who are risking their lives to deliver food in Gaza. The people who are supplying education materials to girls in Afghanistan. The people who not only wear the symbol of the United Nations, but are out there on the ground, showing how we are better together. This is why this is the theme of this 80th session, better together. It's more than a hot motto, it's a hard-won truth. It's our commitment for the next 80 years. Our commitment to not only hope for problems to vanish, but to find the courage to confront them. Better together means to act where action is hard, to choose dialogue and diplomacy when division is easier. Hope at this 80th anniversary means that this session is not remembered not only for its milestone year, but as a moment when we called on extraordinary resolve equal to the extraordinary challenges we face. We owe this to the people, to the men and women, boys and girls who are not giving up, even in the darkest hours of war, who look still to the streaming blue flag for hope, the flag of our United Nations. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. I now invite delegations to view a short film on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations, entitled Better Together.
Chose peace. People who said, dignity cannot be broken. People who carried food on their backs, who rebuilt schools, who gave shelter to strangers. People who stood for the earth before it was too late. And the people who will carry it forward. The young, the unheard, the unstoppable. For 80 years, this has been and will be the work of humanity. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. 80 years and more for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. UN. Better together.
I give the floor to His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, I invite you to return for a moment to our earliest days. When the organization first opened its doors, many of its staff bore visible wounds from war, a limp, a scar, a burn. One of them was Major Brian Urquhart, the second person to be hired by the UN. A British soldier during the Second World War. He had been blown up on a ship in the Channel. Witnessed the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp and carried for the rest of his life the limp from a parachute that failed to open. He was not alone. A clerk might quietly mention a bullet wound. A delegate, the shard of shrapnel still lodged in its chest. They had seen the worst of humanity, the horrors of the death camps, the cruelty of combat, cities entirely wiped out. And it was precisely because of what they had witnessed that they chose to serve peace. Excellencies, there is a persistent myth that peace is naive, that justice is sentimental, that the only real politics is the politics of power and self-interest. But those early staff were not idealists untouched by reality. They had seen war and they knew. Peace is the most courageous, the most practical, the most necessary pursuit of all. And in building the United Nations, they created something extraordinary, a place where all nations, large and small, could come together to solve problems that no country can solve alone. And yet, at this moment, the principles of the United Nations are under assault as never before. As we meet, civilians are targeted and international law trampled in Gaza, the Ukraine, Sudan, and beyond. As we meet, poverty and hunger are on the rise as progress on the Sustainable Development Goals falters. As we meet, the planet burns with fires, floods, and record heat raging through climate chaos. And at the same time, we are moving towards a multipolar world, but without strong multilateral institutions, multipolarity has its risks, as Europe learned in the First World War. To meet these challenges, we must not only defend the United Nations, we must strengthen it. And that is the purpose of Agenda 2030, the Pact for the Future and the UN80 initiative, to renew the foundations of international cooperation and to ensure that we can deliver for people everywhere. Excellences, au fil des années, notre organisation a ouvert la voie à certains des plus grands triomphes de l'humanité. L'éradication de la variole, la régénération de la couche d'ozone et par-dessus tout, la prévention d'une troisième guerre mondiale. Les défis des 80 prochaines années seront à la fois familiers et inédits. La lutte contre la guerre et la pauvreté se poursuivra. Mais il faudra également faire face au chaos climatique, aux technologies incontrôlées, à la militarisation de l'espace et à des crises encore inimaginables. Pour relever ces défis, souvenons-nous de ce que nos fondateurs savaient déjà. La seule voie possible, c'est celle de l'unité. Soyons à l'auteur de ce moment avec lucidité, courage et conviction et réalisons la promesse de la paix. Je vous remercie.
I thank the Secretary General. I have the honor now to give the floor to Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President of Liberia, 2011 Nobel Peace Laureate, and Africa's first elected female head of state, a champion of peace, justice, and democratic governments, a former United Nations staff member, and a steadfast voice for multilateralism.
Excellencies, Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, friends, I'm honored to address this high-level meeting on peace and security as part of the UN 80th anniversary. 80 years after the founding, we must recommit to the Charter, to our common security, to the belief that nations can choose dialogue over destruction. We begin in Africa, our shared cradle of resilience and hope, where democracy is weakening, where fractures across borders from Sudan to the Sahel to the Great Lakes strain our regional architecture. Yet, across Africa, communities stand up to extreme violence. Regional bodies mediate transitions, and women's groups negotiate truces when the state is distant and humanity is near. We have learned hard lessons. Prevention costs less than reconstruction. Reconciliation is a process, not an event. Peace agreements require institutions and citizens to be real. When guns fall silent, skills training, jobs, justice, and dignity must follow swiftly. Liberia's story illustrates UN-led progress and success. The largest peacekeeping force joined Africa's forces to disarm fighters, support elections, reform security institutions, and create space for reconciliation and growth. India's all-female formed police unit strengthened protection and public trust. The mission ended with Liberia standing on its own feet, out of war, into a fragile peace with accountability, inclusive dialogue, and economic opportunity for young people. We must acknowledge that the multilateral architecture built to shield future generations from war is underperforming. That global leadership lacks a unified effort to respond to a technological-enabled world. Commemoration without candor is unaffordable. The world asks whether this House will protect civilians and uphold international humanitarian law. These are not words of despair. They are summons to repair. Our answer must go beyond words. It must translate into actions felt by a family in a tent, a nurse in a clinic, a child in school. A call for change, a renewed vision of collective security, and a broader approach to the triple planetary crisis and worsening inequality. The call for the new design of a new vision, better together, must ensure immediate protection of civilians, finance for conflict prevention, proposals that pay real people, leaders who are audible and accountable, women at the table with budgets that guarantee their participation in all peace negotiation delegations, and the deep weaponization of the information space. None of this is beyond our reach. It demands humility to listen, courage to compromise, persistence to implement. Peace is not built only in conference rooms, but in classrooms where girls learn without fear, clinics where mothers deliver safely, markets where youth find dignified work, courts where law is fair, and in daily acts of neighborly coexistence. 80 years on, the United Nations founding generation would ask if we are still worthy of the hopes inherited. Our answer must be yes. Not because the world is less dangerous, but because our determination is stronger. Better together. Your theme, better together, your theme, it must be a strategy. Regional bodies and the UN working together. Civil society and governments co-designing solutions. Women and men sharing power equally. Truth and reconciliation traveling the same road. Let us leave this anniversary with concrete commitments, funded priorities, and a timetable for action. Show those in shelters, standing in the bread lines, and awaiting news of loved ones that the United Nations, as it celebrates its 80th year, remains a place of peace, a place of refuge, a place of unity, and a place of hope. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ellen Johnson-Sirleaf for your strong and wise words. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland, former Prime Minister of Norway, former Director General of the World Health Organization, a medical doctor committed to health as a human right, and instrumental in placing sustainable development at the forefront of our international agenda.
Madam President, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to address you marking the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. I was born at the cusp of the World War II. My parents were both active in the resistance against the Nazi occupation of Norway, and we had to flee the country. Some of my earliest memories are from Sweden, where my parents worked for Norwegian refugees. And I grew up in a Europe where the ravages of war were still clearly visible, where millions carried terrible scars on their bodies and their souls. It is against this background that the UN was founded, not as a symbol, but as a solemn promise. A promise to equip humanity with legal and diplomatic tools to prevent wars of conquest and domination. A promise to enshrine universal human rights as a bulwark against totalitarianism, racism, and oppression. A promise to foster peace, development, and dignity for all people. So, Madam President, let me highlight two areas where the UN has made an undeniable difference that also are part of particular importance to me personally. First, sustainability. When Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar asked me to chair the World Commission on Environment and Development, I accepted with great humility. And I am very proud of the report we produced, Our Common Future. It helped cement the concept of sustainable development in our collective consciousness. Thanks to UN-led efforts, we started charting a path towards economic development that does not destroy the basis of life for future generations, our climate and our natural environment. But we are today exceeding the planet's boundaries and approaching tipping points where there is no way back. Over 80% of the targets under the Sustainable Development Goals are today off track. Second, President, gender equality. During the UN's International Year Women's Year in 1975, I had just entered government for the first time. Many of my male colleagues hardly knew how to deal with me. In 1979 came the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. In 1981, I became Prime Minister for the first time. In 1995, 30 years ago this month, I delivered my address at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing. I spoke of the moral and economic imperative to end gender apartheid. I believed too optimistically that we would have come further by now. I did not foresee the intensity of the pushback that would come. Even today, there are countries where not a single woman sits in the highest decision-making bodies, including among the P5. But despite such adversity, the UN has methodically worked to strengthen the position of women through education, through microfinance, through work for sexual and reproductive rights and health, and through intense and effective advocacy work. With resolve and determination, we will get there in the end. So, Madam President, I have lived longer than most of you. I have witnessed the tangible differences the UN makes through economic upturns and downturns, political ebbs and flows. I have no patience for those who dismiss the UN as outdated. We are going through a time of great geopolitical shifts and impressive, but also frightening, technological development. The UN as our common hub for getting the facts on the table, debating and deciding on solutions, and acting is more important than ever. We owe that not just to ourselves, but to the generations to come. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland for her blunt and powerful words. I have the honor now to give the floor to Ms. Maria Ressa, 2021 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, award-winning journalist, professor at Columbia University, co-founder of Rappler online news site, and a fearless defender of freedom of expression in the face of constant political harassment and arrests.
President Baerbock, Secretary General Guterres, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm normally chasing you here, and here I am. It's actually a very interesting place. Look, 80 years ago, this institution was born to prevent humanity from destroying itself. Never again, after fascism manipulated information, eroded truth, and dehumanized entire populations to enable genocide and global war. Today, we stand on the rubble of the world that was, and the challenge is to rebuild the United Nations for now, for this moment, when similar forces that led to those atrocities 80 years ago are now surging through digital platforms, insidiously manipulating us for power and profit. The biggest battle we face today is impunity, and it leads to our dehumanization in both the physical world, where wars rage from Ukraine to Gaza, and in the virtual world, where our minds and emotions are manipulated by surveillance capitalism for profit. To fight that, we need information integrity to remind us to be human. I became a journalist because information is power. But news groups lost our gatekeeping powers when an atom bomb exploded in our information ecosystem, a technological one that's silently destroying the very foundations the UN was built to protect. This is the deadliest period for journalists in recorded history. More than 240 journalists killed in Gaza alone. More than died in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the former Yugoslavia combined. This is unprecedented. They're targeted, and there must be accountability. We're living through an information Armageddon, where lies spread 6 times faster than facts on social media. That's a 2018 MIT study. It is so much worse today with generative AI. And the 3 sentences I've said over and over since 2016, without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these 3, we don't have a shared reality. We can't begin to solve any problems, let alone the existential ones you heard from the speakers before me. We cannot have journalism, we cannot have electoral integrity, we cannot have democracy. This is manipulation of human behavior at the cellular levels of our countries. Algorithms reward outrage over empathy, spreading fear, anger, and hate, pumping us full of toxic sludge. Regulating technology isn't a free speech issue, it's about public safety. Because, as has been proven time and time again, online violence is real-world violence. As a Filipino, I'm proud that my country was a charter member of the United Nations, one of only 3 Asian founding nations. Our commitment to multilateralism and peace runs deep. But that legacy was tested under the Duterte administration. Among the actions it took, it filed 11 criminal charges against me in a little over a year. Until today, I still need Supreme Court approval to be here. But I'm here. And my former president, well, he was arrested in March for alleged crimes against humanity and is detained at The Hague waiting for trial. Impunity ends. The rule of law, championed now by the Philippines as it chairs the 6th Committee on Legal Questions, ultimately prevailed. We moved to it. The trends are clear. We are electing illiberal leaders democratically. As of March this year, VDEM said that 72% of the world is now under authoritarian rule. So we turn to you at the UN. It has its critics because You have to move faster. Security Council votes paralyze action on major crises. Outdated representation excludes rising powers. Bureaucratic processes respond too slowly to urgent threats. But as you know, the solution isn't to abandon multilateralism, it's to strengthen it by addressing the very impunity that undermines international law. At this time of creative destruction, I implore you to create. Here are 3 solutions. First, end big tech impunity through global accountability. We need binding standards for international to restore and regulate information integrity, just as we have for nuclear weapons and climate change. There are 2 new initiatives, first from the Vatican, created last weekend with His Holiness Pope Leo XIV, a declaration demanding artificial intelligence remain under human control with clear accountability mechanisms. The second one will be launched later today, a global call for AI red lines, which more than 200 of us have signed. We urge your governments to establish clear international boundaries to prevent universally unacceptable risks for AI, at the very least define what AI should never be allowed to do. Second, build alternative infrastructures for trust. It isn't just big tech that failed to protect the public in the virtual world, it's also you, the governments. At Rappler, we built a chat app using open source protocols. Countries that care about data privacy, France, Germany, all their government websites are on the Matrix protocol. It allows real people to talk to real people without manipulation. The vision is a global federation of trusted news organizations, because this is how journalism will survive and how we begin to build infrastructures of trust. Finally, the third one, create. Create, that's our word today. Invest in comprehensive solutions. Let your imagination run. 3 examples that's happening now. More than 3/4 of UN members now recognize Palestinian statehood, showing that international law can advance despite impunity. On gender, the Nobel Women's Initiative have pointed out, demonstrated that in nearly every conflict around the world, women are leading efforts for peace, defying displacement, patriarchy, gender apartheid, and militarized violence every day. And finally, on Wednesday, Demokrasya Siempre, 20 nations will pledge to strengthen democratic institutions and fight for information integrity. More than 40 Nobel laureates we have gathered together to support this multilateral initiative led by the Global South. Information integrity is the mother of all battles. Win this, and we can win the rest. Lose this, and we lose everything. Please choose courage over comfort, facts over fiction, hope over fear. A lot has changed since the UN was created 80 years ago. But its values, peace, human rights, justice, rule of law, these are more essential today than ever. It is time to create again, to build better, together. Please act now, before it's too late. Thank you.
I thank Maria Ressa also for her very powerful words. I now invite Ms. Mariam Burka, United Nations Global Advocate for Peace and youth leader, whose work bridges art, activism, championing women's rights, youth empowerment, and peace building, to recite a poem.
Mr. President, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, excellencies, good morning. Walking these halls, I realized that the United Nations was not built from harmony. It grew out of the ashes of war and the grief watered by the collective memory of what happens when dialogue and cooperation fails. Its foundation is not peace achieved, but peace pursued, fragile, imperfect, necessary, not just worth fighting for, but requiring a fight. And today, 80 years on, we gather to honor what has been achieved. Nations rebuilt, walls of division lowered, millions lifted by the shared will, but these are victories worth remembering, but the story is unfinished. The cracks in the foundation calls us to repair, to act, not to retreat. Our world bleeds before our eyes. Children in conflict zones, nations silenced by hunger and war. And it begs the question, are we witnessing the collapse of conscience in real time? Because behind every pact, there are people. Behind every statistic, there is a story. And behind every commitment that we sign, there are lives depending on whether we honor our words or not. And so this is not the time to feel powerless, because yes, hope and despair can coexist in the same breath because healing is not linear. The United Nations is not a monument, it is a mirror, and it reflects what we have dared to imagine 80 years ago, and today, here, it asks, will we dare again? Will we dare to work better together? Because if the past proves that we can build peace from ashes, then the present demands that we build it again, louder, braver, together. I speak as a global peace advocate, not because peace is easy, but because silence is complicity, and so I will not be silent. You know, I used to think that peace was a place, a final destination we arrive at after all wars have ended. But I have come to understand that peace is not a line that we cross. It is a choice that we make over and over and over again, especially when it is the hardest, especially when it feels far away. Peace is not a silence we force into people's mouths. It is not the absence of war, but the presence of understanding. Peace is a child learning to sleep again without flinching at the wind. It is a mother not having to choose between bread and dignity. It is a father not having to swallow his voice to feel like a man. Peace is messy, like forgiveness. It does not arrive in parade floats. Sometimes it comes crawling through broken windows when we finally agree that being right is not better than being whole. Peace is not found, it is built, brick by brutal brick, by hands that once knew how to fight now choose to hold instead. There was a time when we measured strength by how long we could hold a grudge. But today, let us measure strength by how long we could hold space for someone else's truth. Because there was a me and a you before there was ever an us. And if us is broken, then peace is what lets us lay down the shards without aiming at each other's throats. Peace is the poem you write after the war in your chest has finally run out of ink. It is the moment you return to your body and find yourself still standing. Peace is not easy. And so let us not forget the ones who have carried peace quietly through the fire. The women whose hands mend what war has torn, who rebuild homes from memory, raise children between checkpoints, hold their families like nations, because peace has always known the name of a woman, carried through the way that she chooses courage over collapse again and again. And so today I speak peace into the bones of this world, into the rubble, into the rage, into the ruins. Because if war teaches us how to shatter, then peace must teach us how to stay soft, to stay human. And perhaps what makes us human is not that we always succeed in peace, but but that we dare again and again to seek it, refusing to let our brokenness be the end of our story. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Burkhan, and as we conclude and after listening to this beautiful poem, let me emphasize again, peace is only a word and better together is only a slogan until we embrace it. So I invite you to embrace and live up to be better together over this 80th session.
This is not the story of an institution. It's the story of people. People who stood between war and peace and chose peace. People who said, dignity cannot be broken. People who carried food on their backs, who rebuilt schools, who gave shelter to strangers. People who stood for the earth before it was too late. And the people who will carry it forward. The young, the unheard, the unstoppable. For 80 years, this has been and will be the work of humanity. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. 80 years and more for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. UN. Better together.
Before adjourning this meeting, I would like to remind delegation that the high-level meeting on the 30th anniversary of Fourth World Conference on Women will begin immediately in this hall. Delegations are therefore requested to remain seated while the stage is being prepared for the next meeting. The high-level plenary meeting to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations has concluded. I thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. The meeting of the NATO North Atlantic Council has been reportedly scheduled to take place tomorrow, 23 September. On 20 September, Russia's defense ministry stated that its fighter jets made a scheduled flight from Karelia on the border with Finland to an airfield in the Kaliningrad region in strict accordance with international airspace rules, without deviating from the agreed flight path and without violating Estonian airspace. According to the Russian Federation, the flight path was over neutral waters of the Baltic Sea.
Statement as President of the General Assembly.
Please take your seats, distinguished delegates.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights, once and for all. When these famous words were spoken by Hillary Clinton 30 years ago in Beijing, they were revolutionary. But if our daughters heard this today, wouldn't they rather think, why would women's rights not be human rights? Our daughters, who are the fastest sprinter in their high school, our daughters who are CEO of an AI startup, our daughters who have watched their mothers become the first female president of the Marshall Islands, of Namibia, North Macedonia, Peru, of Slovenia or Suriname. All presidents joining us here today. For so many of you, of us here in this room, we hold these positions that when we ourselves were young seemed unattainable, but are now almost normal for the next generation. Because we stand on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of women who paved the way forward also for us. towards a world in which our daughters today regard women's rights, our human rights, as a simple fact, not as something revolutionary. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, feminist leaders, ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate the courageous women who fought for every single phrase, for every single word in the Beijing Declaration. Their fight paid off. The Beijing Declaration was a watershed achievement advancing women's rights, resources, and representation. As Mama Mongella, how she was called, stated in 1995, a revolution has begun. There's no going back. Yet, 30 years later, the revolution remains unfinished. When the phrase, "she runs like a girl," is hailed as an insult, when highly qualified CEOs are called diversity hires, when a female world leader is attacked on social media not for the speech she gave, but for the wrong high heels she wore. That is when we remember how far we still have to go. There's no country in the world where women's rights are fully equal to men. And there are still too many places where even speaking about women's rights is a matter of life and death. Just weeks ago in Afghanistan, after the deadly earthquake, women and girls were left trapped in rubble as male rescuers were forbidden from touching them. As one survivor said, being a woman here means we are always the last to be seen. We see this also in Sudan, where the brutal civil war between two generals is literally being fought over women's bodies. I still have her voice in my ear when one mother told me, while I was sitting with her in a refugee camp, that she wishes that they all would have been simply killed instead of having to see her daughters being raped over and over again. This year alone, demand for life-saving post-rape support in Sudan increased almost 4 times. And this is no exception. 1 in 3 women globally will experience sexual violence at some point in her lifetime. 1 out of 3. This is us. And these battles extend to family planning. UNFPA estimates that today a quarter of women are unable to make decisions about their own health care, and roughly half of all pregnancies are unintended. Delivering on Beijing, on this revolution, means also that no male politician, judge or religious leader should dare to tell our girls what to do with their bodies, because they are human beings, not property. It's our body, our choice. In this regard, I'm honored we are joined by our first guest speaker, Cecilia Suarez, who is using her platform to speak out against this scourge in Latin America and the Caribbean, affecting as many as 76% of women in the region. But even in the darkest hours, women are not victims. They are survivors. They are heroes. And it's an extreme honor that we will also hear from our guest speaker, Nadia Murad, Nobel laureate, a hero who not only survived the unthinkable crimes of ISIS, but gave Yazidi women a voice and by that defeated a terrorist organization. Women like Nadia Murad remind us that women's rights are not only human rights, but human rights are the best weapon for peace. Excluding women peace builders doesn't just reduce the possibility of peace, it undermines its very foundation and longevity. Therefore, we are celebrating today not only Beijing, but also 25 years of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. Excellencies, Beijing and Resolution 1325 promised not only rights, but also resources. And there, the revolution has barely begun. At the current rate, reaching economic equality will take 123 years. But women's economic empowerment is not just about doing a favor for women, but a favor for every society, every economy. As they say, it's economics, stupid. Closing the gender gap would increase global GDP by $7 trillion US. Which brings us to the third R, representation. We all know that when women are at the table, companies perform better, peace treaties last longer, and governments deliver more. Their presence is power. Yet, in this hall of principles, last year, fewer than 10% of speakers during high-level week were women. And out of all 80 presidents of the General Assembly, I'm only the 5th woman. Not even speaking about the Secretary General, where in 80 years we have never had a female SG. This is not just This is, as we can hear, not just a matter of representation, it's a matter of credibility to practice what we preach. But it's not only who is leading, it is how we lead. Leadership means collaboration. The theme of this 80th session overall is better together. A motto which also guided Beijing, where so many women came together in networks like Femnet, led by Memory Kachamba, a guest speaker here also today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate this spirit of better together and the courage of the women who paved the path to Beijing and beyond. But tomorrow we go back to work. As female presidents, as male presidents, as Olympic sprinters, as CEOs, as ordinary mothers and daughters. And just in case, while finishing the revolution from Beijing, we might hear that contemptuous phrase, "you run like a girl," we should remember what little girls all around the world would do. Exactly that. Proudly run like a girl, fast as hell, even in high heels, showing that women's rights are always human rights, that they are our rights, our future. I now invite the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to make a statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, dear friends. 30 years ago, the world came together to affirm that the rights of women and girls are not separate, secondary, or negotiable. They are human rights. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action is the most ambitious global political commitment on women's rights ever achieved. And it has helped to power advances in some critical areas: legal protection, political participation, education, maternal mortality, recognizing the need to tackle violence against women as a global priority, and more. But progress has been slow and uneven, and no nation has achieved full equality for women and girls. Sustainable Development Goal 5, gender equality, is lagging far behind. Hard-won gains are now under attack. Meanwhile, conflicts and climate disasters are multiplying, and the human rights of women and girls are casualties of both. Cultural and structural barriers remain entrenched, and technology is spreading hate like a virus. A wave of misogyny is rolling across the world. Let us be clear. Equal rights and opportunities are not partisan issues. They are global imperatives and the foundation of peace, prosperity, and progress. Excellencies, dear friends, in every region, every country, every community, women and girls are fighting for their rights, demanding freedoms, combating abusive practices, rallying for legal protections, and organizing to take their rightful place at the table in decision-making and peace processes. And the United Nations stands with them. All leaders should do the same, by speaking out for the rights of women and girls, by making clear that tradition cannot excuse oppression, and by doing everything possible to realize the vision of the Beijing Declaration. Excellencies, dear friends, earlier this year, countries took an important step forward. The Commission on the Status of Women adopted a new political declaration committing to implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action fast and in full. So now all countries must live up to that responsibility. We need strong, visible support at the highest levels and concrete plans backed by real investment to support women's organizations, services, and solutions, to deliver the Beijing Plus 30 action agenda, to advance socio-economic empowerment, to defend women's rights, and to confront a challenge that was barely imagined 3 decades ago. Artificial intelligence is reshaping our world, but the transformation is unfolding in an industry dominated by men, shaped by biased data, and driven by algorithms that frequently reinforce discrimination. We must confront violence and online hate and ensure that technology serves equality, not exclusion. And that includes a priority in investing in women and girls' education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Because women's participation in decision-making on this issue and every other, it is not a gift, it is a right. It strengthens societies, enriches debate, and boosts equality across the board. We must remove systematic obstacles to equality for women and girls. From discrimination to unequal pay and inequality before the law. We need universal ratification of the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Excellences, enfin, nous devons prendre des mesures proactives pour assurer la participation des femmes à la prise de décision à tous les échelons. Ici, aux Nations Unies, grâce à des efforts soutenus, nous avons atteint et maintenu la parité hommes-femmes parmi les cadres dirigeants. And allow me a brief explanation on this. Some think that we had to bend the rules in favor of women to reach parity. Totally wrong. The only thing we did was to guarantee that there was effective equality opportunities for women and men and that the selection processes had not a misogynous bias, and the result was parity at the level of the High Direction of the United Nations. Nous poursuivrons nos efforts pour parvenir à la parité dans l'ensemble de l'organisation, guidée par notre plan d'accélération pour l'égalité des genres. Excellences, il y a 80 ans, la Charte des Nations Unies affirmait l'égalité des droits entre les femmes et les hommes. Il y a 30 ans, la Déclaration de Pékin consacrait les droits des femmes comme des droits humains. Aujourd'hui, dans cette enceinte, nous devons entendre comment nous comptons transformer ces ambitions en réalité. Faites entendre vos engagements, présentez vos plans. Ensemble, réalisons l'égalité pour les femmes et les filles, une égalité dont notre monde a tant besoin. Et je vous remercie.
I thank the Secretary General. I now invite Her Excellency Huang Shouwei, Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China, as host of the 4th World Conference on Women, to make a statement.
尊敬的主席女士、各位同事，中方十分赞赏联大召开会议，纪念北京世妇会30周年。正如刚刚主席女士所言，北京宣言和行动纲领对女性而言，它的重要意义是具有里程碑性的，它凝聚了智慧和力量，是持续引领全球性别平等进程的行动蓝图。30年来，我们共同见证了北京世妇会催生的巨大变化，从推动法律变革到完善社会服务，从增强妇女权能到支持妇女参与，各国追求男女平等的行动在普遍的加强，无数妇女实现了从沉默到发声，从边缘到中心，从依附到独立的深刻变革，充分彰显了北京宣言和行动纲领的历史远见与穿透时空的生命力。男女平等不仅是人权，更是实现可持续发展的有力杠杆。30年来，中国作为北京世妇会的东道国，始终以行动践行承诺，在中国共产党的领导下，坚决贯彻男女平等基本国策，连续实施4个周期的妇女发展纲要，构建起涵盖100多部法律的保障妇女权益法律体系，以可量化、可操作的制度工具，显著提升了6亿9千多万妇女的经济赋权、健康、教育、就业、参政、社会保险等各方面的水平。中国妇女以卓越的创造力擎起了国家事业的半边天。中国始终积极支持全球妇女事业的发展，与联合国合作设立女童和妇女的教育奖，习近平主席夫人彭丽媛担任特使。 为180多个国家和地区培养20多万的女性人才，在20多个国家实施超过4000万美元的赋能项目，创建的全球数字赋能妇女中心，为消除数字的性别鸿沟，促进女性深度参与 AI 发展提供了新的实用平台。尊敬的主席女士、各位同事，当前百年变局加速演进，全球治理处于重要的十字路口，还有近10%的妇女深陷极端的贫困，超过6亿女性生活在战乱之中，对妇女的暴力、歧视和经济不平等依然存在。发展中国家性别平等年度的资金缺口达到4200多亿元。新的挑战迫切需要采取更加积极务实的行动。中国国家主席习近平提出了全球治理的倡议，恰逢其时，实现男女平等和妇女全面发展，更需要全球的合作，加速行动，久久为功。站在新的起点上，中方呼吁坚持推动妇女平等发展，把保障妇女权益上升为国家意志，内化为社会的行为规范，加大投资的资源的投入，确保妇女平等受益、平等参与，持续赋能妇女创新发展，为妇女和女童提供优质教育，利用数字技术提升妇女素质，支持妇女发挥领导力，激发妇女提高新的动能，促进全球妇女共同发展，践行真正的多边主义，发挥联合国的重要作用，深化南南合作和南北对话，加大对发展中国家资金和技术的支持，不让一个妇女和女童掉队。尊敬的主席女士、各位同事们，男女平等不仅关乎女性，更关乎人类文明的进步。让我们牢记初心使命，不断把北京宣言和行动纲领的蓝图转化为实实在在的成果，携手构建人类命运共同体。我们期待在全球妇女峰会在北京与大家见面。谢谢大家。
I thank the Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China. I now invite Ms. Sima Bahous, Executive Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, to make her statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished heads of state and government, Your Majesties, Ministers, Excellencies. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action changed the world. It brought the UN Charter's principles and promises to life for women and girls. Human rights, dignity, equality. To this day, The Beijing Declaration remains the most visionary, groundbreaking, and far-reaching global agenda for gender equality and women's rights. And it has delivered. Today, girls are far more likely to finish school than any other moment in history. Maternal deaths have nearly halved. The number of women in parliament has more than doubled. And nearly every country has laws to end violence against women and girls. And in just the last 5 years alone, nearly 100 discriminatory laws have been reversed. Every step forward was hard-won by feminist movements, by governments, by the multilateral system. And every step forward proved the same truth. Gender equality works. But progress has not been fast enough, wide enough, or deep enough. And in too many places, it is being reversed. On our current path, 351 million women and girls will still live in extreme poverty by 2030. And today, 676 million women and girls live within reach of deadly conflict, the highest recorded since the 1990s. Women and girls in crises suffer unspeakable atrocities, hunger and violence, from Afghanistan, the DRC, Gaza, the Sudan, Ukraine, to Yemen and beyond. Women and girls bear the brunt of crisis. We owe it to them to spare no effort in the pursuit for peace. Excellencies, the very systems built to advance and fund gender equality are being hollowed out quietly but deliberately. This is not just regression, it is retreat. But the future is not fixed. Another path is still possible. Excellencies, as we commemorate 80 years of the United Nations and 30 years since the Beijing Declaration, 2025 must be our turning point. This is why, in this pivotal year, we asked governments to recommit with bold, measurable actions across a roadmap of 6 priority areas. And you answered. 108 governments have stepped forward with 196 national actions on the Beijing Plus 30 action agenda. You are investing in care systems, strengthening gender data, and funding women peace builders on the front lines. You are putting power, protection, and possibility in the hands of women and girls. You are harnessing technology and innovation to advance, not hinder, equality. And you are enacting laws to protect women and girls from violence. Your actions reflect partnerships with feminist movements who have carried this agenda through times of backlash and breakthrough alike. Importantly, your actions prioritize the leadership and voice of adolescent girls and women. These actions form a map of the possible. And we know what that possible can deliver when we come together. Just this past week, you took another step forward together when you adopted by consensus the resolution to revitalize the Commission on the Status of Women, a timely legacy of Beijing Plus 30. I applaud you for this. This is multilateralism at its best. Excellencies, your words today must be matched by courage tomorrow. In the policies you pass, in the budgets you allocate, and the change you drive together with and for women. Because gender equality remains a unifying force for the world. Let history remember 2025 as the year we stood our ground for ceasefires, for peace, for justice, for equal rights, for sustainable development, and for prosperity for all women, for all girls, for all humanity. I thank you.
I thank the Executive Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, I now invite Ms. Dean Kate, Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, to make her statement.
Mr. Secretary General, Madam President, Excellencies, esteemed colleagues. 30 years ago, in Beijing, the world pledged to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment. 1 year earlier, at the International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, government affirmed that sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights are a precondition for women empowerment and essential to dignity and development. Population, sexual reproductive health and rights, and gender equality are inextricably linked. Beijing and Cairo go hand in hand, mutually reinforcing and universal. Today, we gather not only to commemorate, but also to thank the member states for their effort. While significant progress has been made, it is fragile. Too many women still die giving birth. Too many women and girls are denied safety and opportunity. Millions of youth and marginalized people do not have their most basic needs met. And new threats are rising: climate change, increasing conflict, digital world where technology, including artificial intelligence, can be fabulous opportunities when used properly, instead of being weaponized against women and girls. Demographic shifts are reshaping societies. Rapid population growth in some regions, aging in others, rising migration, systems are strained, inequalities deepen, reproductive rights come under threat. Excellences, je m'adresse à vous aujourd'hui en tant que nouvelle directrice exécutive de UNFPA. J'assume cette responsabilité avec humilité et détermination, déterminée à protéger les acquis, à défendre haut et fort les droits humains, à aller plus loin ensemble, afin que les promesses faites à Beijing et au Caire soient enfin tenues. Le Fonds des Nations Unies pour la population se tient à vos côtés, aux côtés de nos partenaires des Nations Unies, de la société civile et en particulier des organisations et réseaux de femmes dans leur travail inlassable pour promouvoir les droits et les choix des femmes et des filles dans toute leur diversité. La contribution de UNFPA à ces efforts est unique. En tant qu'agence de santé publique et de population, nous œuvrons pour que chaque femme et chaque fille et chaque jeune puisse utiliser son plein potentiel pour bâtir son avenir et vivre à l'abri de la violence. Les droits et santé sexuelle et reproductive constituent le socle de la société. Le meilleur investissement pour un monde meilleur et plus juste, tel qu'imaginé par nous tous dans l'agenda 2030. Excellencies, let us honor Beijing and Cairo with urgent action. Under our Secretary General leadership, we look forward to delivering as one with our sister agency on the ground. Let us recommit to do better together and make sure that no woman should die while giving life. Let's invest in right and choices, the foundation of justice, prosperity, and peace. Merci.
Merci. I thank the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund. I now invite Ms. Hala Haidar, Chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, to make her statement.
Madam President of the GA, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. 30 years after Beijing, it must be said loud and clear, gender equality is not a favor. It's not optional. It is justice, peace, and progress for all humanity. Beijing gave us a powerful blueprint. It mandated the world to tackle 12 urgent areas: poverty, education, violence, decision-making, among others. And it transformed global policies. We have made gains: stronger laws against gender-based violence, more girls in schools, and a growing recognition that women's rights are human rights. But let us be honest, we are at a crossroad. Around the world, we witness a backlash against women's human rights, their underrepresentation in decision-making, online abuse, and discrimination against women being coded into new technologies. Moreover, we are horrified by the impact of conflict on women and girls. This is why CEDAW, the committee and the convention, matters more than ever. Beijing gave us the vision. CEDAW gives us the compass. The convention is legally binding. It holds states to account and measures progress and turns promises into rights that cannot be taken away. CEDAW covers every Beijing priority: defends women's economic rights, access to resources, calls for education, a force of transformation, places gender-based violence against women at the center of its concern and demands action. It advances women's voice in peace and security processes, and in that regard, CEDAW has just published an addendum on WPS. And with General Recommendation number 40 on the equal and inclusive representation of women in decision-making system, whose elaboration was supported by a large number of member states, it sets a bold roadmap for 50-50 parity in decision-making, not some distant day, but now. CEDAW is not a bystander. It's a driving force. It is addressing many emerging issues faced by women and girls in conflict, online abuse, stereotypes, and the gendered impacts of climate change. So today, let us stand together and say we will not go back. We will not allow the progress of the past 30 years to be undone. We will renew our commitments, demand accountability, and keep pushing until every woman and girl can live in freedom, equality, and dignity. Beijing gave us the blueprint. CEDAW gives us the compass. Today, as we celebrate Beijing Plus 30, I call on every government, in every institution, and every one of us. Let us turn today's momentum into a movement. Let us act united, boldly, urgently, until equality is no longer a dream, but the lived reality of every woman and girls everywhere. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. I now invite Ms. Claudia Flores, chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls, to make a statement.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates and colleagues, it is an honor to join you in my capacity as chair of the UN Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Thank you for including the working group in this landmark discussion. As we reflect on and reaffirm the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, we have both an opportunity but also a responsibility. We celebrate the gains of the last 30 years, recognizing that these victories, above all, belong to the brave women and girls human rights defenders who have pressed forward in the face of great restraints and risk. We also acknowledge the important progress achieved by member states in partnership with diverse stakeholders. As it marks its 15th anniversary, the working group has seen meaningful strides, from laws ensuring equal participation in public life, to reforms dismantling discrimination in family and cultural life, to new investments expanding women's and girls' economic rights. These advances demonstrate what is possible when states commit systematically to equality in all of its dimensions. Yet, we must also confront the reality that alongside this progress, and perhaps in response to it, a troubling wave of backlash threatens women and girls' rights worldwide, including challenges to the very concept of gender as the social and cultural norms and power relations we have built around sex. We see retrogressive narratives and policies designed to restrict rights and divide movements for dignity and equality. These are not abstract debates. They are concrete harms with grave costs for women and girls. In our most recent response, the working group, together with 30 independent mandate holders, issued a joint statement reaffirming the centrality of gender to the protection of human rights. Today, I urge states to act with determination to preserve international consensus and protect hard-won gains for women and girls. At the same time, we also recognize that these moments of challenge can be moments of opportunity. The working group remains committed to supporting states and stakeholders in advancing substantive gender equality as articulated in CEDAW. This year, through its forthcoming report on artificial intelligence and through the CREATE framework presented in its latest guidance, this framework offers a holistic and inclusive pathway to counter the gender backlash and to foster the transformation needed for a global community truly rooted in human dignity. Excellencies, while we celebrate the achievements of member states, civil society, the United Nations, all who are gathered here, we must also confront urgently and honestly what it will take to achieve gender equality. We can't afford another 30 years of effort only to see progress unravel. What is needed now is investment and political will to hold the line, the clarity to find ways forward amidst mounting challenges, and the integrity to trust women and girls as they continue to lead the way. Thank you.
I thank the chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. I now invite Ms. Reem Al-Salem, Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences, to make her statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action, the BDPA, gave the world a visionary blueprint that recognized the structural, societal, and individual causes of violence against women and their consequences. Today, as we commemorate its anniversary, we must recommit to its promise with honesty and courage. That starts with returning to the original intent of the BDPA, not diluted, not reinterpreted, and to implementing it comprehensively and not superficially. Let me highlight 6 commitments that are especially urgent and pertinent today. First, we must reaffirm women's inherent dignity and humanity. The BDPA mentions dignity 7 times and humanity 5 times, reminding us that women are not a subset, but are half of humanity. Yet today, those words have vanished from our policy language as though women's most basic worth and rights could be set aside. If we lose the language of dignity and humanity, we lose the foundation of equality. Second, we must reclaim the material reality of being female. The BDPA references the term sex or a derivative of it 176 times, recalling that all major human rights instruments prohibit discrimination on that basis. And yet, 3 decades later, the architects of the BDPA would be in disbelief to learn that stating this truth is branded by some as hateful, outdated, and regressive. Third, we must confront the rampant commodification and objectification of women and girls. Their bodies, their sexuality, and even reproductive functions have been turned into products for the sale and purchase, creating patriarchal entitlements and control, both online and offline. The BDPA was gravely and rightly concerned with this exploitation, particularly of prostitution and trafficking for sexual exploitation, and urged states to prosecute those who profit from it. Today, we must finally heed that call. Fourth, the BDPA identified aggression, colonialism, and foreign occupation as causes of grave violations, ethnic cleansing, genocide that fall within cruelty on women and girls. While governments stand idly by, women and girls, particularly in Palestine and in Afghanistan, are being intentionally and systematically targeted and destroyed. These atrocities and the impunity granted to their perpetrators expose the profound hypocrisy of governments who claim to defend women's rights while turning a blind eye to their annihilation. Fifth, the BDPA demanded accountability. But instead of an increased access to justice, we are seeing the opposite, on several fronts undermining rights hard won. Perpetrators of rape, trafficking, war crimes, and genocide walk free, flaunting their impunity while some governments boast of their support to them. And finally, the BDPA warned against excessive military spending, recognizing that militarization fuels violence against women while draining resources from peace, women empowerment, and ending violence, as well as social justice. Yet today, the global arms race intensifies, leaving women and girls to pay a hefty price. Excellencies, 30 years ago, states believed this agenda was achievable. If this was possible then, it is possible now, not as an act of charity, but as a necessity and undeniable right for women, for half of humanity. That half is watching, and that half will hold you to account. Thank you.
I thank the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences. I now invite Cecilia Suarez, UN Global Advocate for the Spotlight Initiative, to make her statement.
Good morning, Madam President, Secretary General, Excelencias, amigos. Nos reunimos como cada año en este mes para echar la mirada al mundo que hoy habitamos. Un mundo complejo, sin duda, entre múltiples conflictos armados, un genocidio en toda regla, una crisis climática cada vez más severa y el imparable avance de la tecnología sin un marco jurídico y claro, así como transparente. Y como cada septiembre, volvemos al tema que nos convoca, la equidad que mujeres y niñas siguen anhelando y demandando a lo largo y ancho de nuestro planeta. Hoy, con una urgencia radical que muestra que una política de omisión significaría para millones de mujeres y niñas en todas las latitudes un retroceso. No es sorpresa para nadie que la inversión global en equidad de género resulte una ficha comodín dentro de los presupuestos globales. Los números así lo demuestran. Tan solo en lo que llevamos en 2025, la lucha por la equidad de género presenta un déficit presupuestario de 420 billones de dólares. En contraste, la inversión global en gasto militar asciende a 2.718 billones de dólares. Y escúchenlo bien, 2.718 billones en armamento y guerra frente a un déficit de 420 billones en equidad de género. Es decir, el mundo hoy prefiere gastar 6 veces más en prepararse para el conflicto que en impulsar y salvaguardar a la mitad de su población, quienes, por cierto, también construimos economía. La pregunta inevitable es, ¿qué hemos normalizado para creer que tener los medios de destrucción es más importante que garantizar el desarrollo y las oportunidades de mujeres y niñas? ¿Hasta cuándo seguiremos pensando que se nos puede dejar vivir como ciudadanas de segunda? La pregunta puede sonar ingenua. La guerra es un negocio, pero también lo es invertir en desaparecer aquello que mantiene a la mitad de la población, las mujeres, lejos de su verdadero potencial dentro de nuestras sociedades y, a su vez, restringir el crecimiento de la sociedad en su conjunto. Y lo volveremos a decir, se tiende a ver y entender esta brecha como algo que oprime, aflige y alcanza únicamente a las mujeres. Pero no nos equivoquemos. Preguntémonos, ¿qué es lo que realmente pierde un hombre cuando es educado y adoctrinado en el aparente privilegio de su masculinidad? ¿Qué es lo que tanto tememos sea visto y reconocido en ellos, la duda, la ternura, su verdadera fragilidad o su capacidad para sentir. Podría también mencionar que el 90% de las organizaciones trabajando en pro de las mujeres han sufrido recortes financieros durísimos este año. La situación es crítica. Por lo mismo, seré muy concreta. Se necesitan recursos, reformas y liderazgo. La iniciativa Spotlight ha demostrado con sus mecanismos, programas y marcos jurídicos que es posible obtener resultados positivos y concretos en esta lucha. Es liderazgo lo que se requiere de quienes hoy están aquí. Un liderazgo que impulse reformas y que con hechos se comprometa a invertir conscientemente en la lucha por la igualdad. Por último, a los escépticos les pregunto, ¿de verdad creen que nuestro paso por este plano de la existencia es tan extenso, tan largo, como para priorizar actos de destrucción frente al camino del avance colectivo donde todas y todos avancemos juntos? Piénsenlo. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Suarez, and now I invite Ms. Memorio Kanshamba, Executive Director of the African Women's Development and Communication Network, to make a statement.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, thank you for this opportunity to speak at this occasion. I stand before you not as a one voice, but many that carry the breath of African women and girls from the mountains of Kilimanjaro to the shores of Dakar, the streets of Harare, and the villages of Mali. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration, lit a flame. Women and girls danced. We sang together. The moment was not only symbolic, it was sacred. It was a covenant. And yes, there has been progress in the areas that Your Excellencies eloquently discussed and share on care work, gender-responsive budgeting, on women, peace and security, on the girl child, and climate justice. But let us be honest, even though this has entered the discourse has not delivered. There's been persistent and deliberate gaps, particularly the chronic underfunding of national gender institutions and the many sectors that shape our lives: health, education, agriculture, livelihoods, as well as public service provision. We have seen the erosion of women's organizing and feminist movements. We have seen reversals of hard-won gains and rights undermining our demands and struggle. We African women and girls demand bold, transparent, and participatory accountability. We insist on inclusion of women and girls in all their diversity. Civil society is not the enemy of the state. We are co-creators of development. We are guardians of democracy. We are the architects of liberation. The backlash that we face is not just against gender equality. It's against the truth. It is against freedom. It's against the principles upon which these institutions celebrating 80 years has been founded. We must affirm feminist principles that offer real alternatives to the broken system. Ubuntu, our shared humanity and interdependence, reparative justice for colonialization, debt, and climate harm. Africa each year loses close to 60 billion through illicit financial flows. These are funds and resources that can make a huge impact on women's rights and gender equality. Your Excellency, We also face a lot on our peace as a continent, on the dignity, on the extraction that we see of critical resources in the name of advancing climate transition. We see systematic violence. 80 years of the United Nations, we must not still be debating the relevance of gender equality and women's rights. Not in this generation, not after 30 years of Beijing, not after decades of the struggle. Women and girls deserve a life free of violence, free from the misogyny, free from the technology-facilitated violence that we see. Women and girls deserve to live and to thrive in dignity and joy. UNGA 80 must rise to this moment of reckoning and make bold, unapologetic resolve to fund gender equality and women's rights. It is non-negotiable. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Kachamba. I now invite Ms. Nadia Murad, Nobel Peace Laureate and founder of Nadia's Initiative, to make her statement.
Thank you, Madam President, for your commitment to advancing the rights of women and girls globally. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago in Beijing, the world declared that women's rights are human rights. Today we gather not only to reflect on that promise, but to ask, are we truly fulfilling it? Progress has been made, more women in parliaments, in classrooms, in leadership. But we are also at a dangerous crossroads. Around the world, democracy is weakening, extremism is rising, and women's rights are under attack. Nowhere is this more visible than in conflict-affected and crisis-affected areas. Millions of women and girls denied the right to education, targeted with sexual violence, or forced into early marriage. Behind these injustices are human lives, mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends, families destroyed, futures stolen. I was once a young woman living in peace until ISIS captured me and countless other women and girls, shattering our lives in unimaginable ways. Hundreds of these women and girls, including my niece, my sister-in-law, and my cousins, are still missing in captivity in Syria. Since my escape, I have met many women who endured unimaginable suffering and whose strength is extraordinary. But strength alone cannot rebuild lives. They need action, they need justice, they need resources. And yet, women's organizations, the lifeline in times of crisis, remain underfunded and excluded. Perpetrators of sexual violence continue to enjoy impunity. Equally urgent, the international community must hold accountable regimes, groups, and governments that deny women and girls the rights, those that legalize child marriage, restrict education, or enact discriminatory laws. Justice must extend beyond individuals to the system and structures that perpetuate inequality. If we are serious about the Beijing Platform for Action, then we must do three things. Fund the women's organizations on the front lines, guarantee women's full participation in peace and security, hold perpetrators and oppressive systems accountable, because impunity should never be an option. These are not just policies, they are promises we owe it to every woman and girl. Sustainable peace is impossible while half of humanity's population is silenced or targeted with violence. 30 years after Beijing, reflection is not enough. We must accelerate. The next generation of women and girls deserve to inherit no more promises, but the reality of equality, justice, and dignity. Thank you.
I thank Nadia Murad, and with the wise words from her, we have just heard the last speaker for the opening segment of this high-level meeting. I thank all our eminent speakers once again for their participation and insightful interventions, and maybe we have applause for all of the speakers again. Heads of state and government, ministers, excellencies, distinguished delegates, distinguished participants. We shall now hear statements in the plenary segment in accordance with paragraphs 1 and 3b of General Resolution 79/288. Before giving the floor to the first speaker, I would like to inform delegations that we have a very, very, very long list of inscriptions, which shows the commitments. But in order to enable the high-level meeting to hear from as many delegations as possible in the limited time, all speakers are requested to adhere to the 3-minute time limit for statements in the national capacity and 5 minutes for statements made on behalf of a group of states. Delegations are advised that the limit for time statement will be strictly enforced, and I would like to underline that. The microphones will be automatically muted once the speaking time has elapsed. Having said this, I would appeal to all speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace to facilitate interpretation into the 6 official languages of the United Nations, and have always a look at the little clock in front of you. Having said that, it's my dear honor to give now the floor to our first speaker of the high-level meeting convened by the President of the General Assembly on the 30th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women. And I give the floor to Her Excellency Jennifer Gerling-Simons, President of the Republic of Suriname.
Excellencies, it is with great honor and responsibility that I stand here as the first female president of the Republic of Suriname and also the first member state speaking today as we commemorate the 30th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women. This historic occurrence in my country has not only cracked the glass ceiling, but more importantly paved the way for particularly girls to dream about something that was perceived uncommon only about 3 decades ago. Today, we celebrate the work and advocacy of many pioneers at both political and intergovernmental levels in bringing the cause of women's empowerment and gender equality to the center of the global agenda. Madam President, as I pause to reflect of the role of women in Suriname, I can conclude that women of my country historically have always been on the forefront in the fight for freedom, justice, and economic development. Suriname remains committed to the Beijing Declaration and has made gradual progress in strengthening legislation, advancing gender-sensitive policies, and implementing programs to address persistent inequalities. Persistent challenges such as economic disparities, gender-based violence, and underrepresentation of women in leadership. These must be addressed with renewed urgency and vigor. We also face new and have to address new challenges
like the negative influence of social media on the self-image of many girls and young women. In closing, Madam President, Suriname reaffirms its unwavering commitment to advancing the rights, empowerment, and full participation of women and girls in every aspect of life. As a priority action, my government commits to further improve access to STEM education for girls and the protection of women and girls against gender-based violence. Advancing gender equality means progress in achieving sustainable development for all. Working as equals, living as equals, as women and men, we are better together. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency, and again, congratulations for being the first of your kind, the first female president of Suriname. Congratulations. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Karen Keller-Sutter, President of the Swiss Confederation.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la déclaration et le programme d'action de Beijing sont aujourd'hui encore notre boussole. Car l'égalité de genre n'est pas une option, c'est un droit humain universel et un catalyseur de développement économique. Malgré le chemin parcouru, les défis restent importants aussi en Suisse. Avant tout, la violence contre les femmes demeure une réalité inacceptable. Certaines inégalités salariales persistent, en particulier parce que les mères ne sont pas pleinement intégrées sur le marché de l'emploi et parce que les femmes sont encore trop peu nombreuses aux postes de décision. 30 ans après Beijing, notre objectif reste intact. La Suisse a pris des mesures concrètes pour mettre en œuvre les droits inscrits dans notre Constitution et dans nos engagements internationaux. Une stratégie nationale pour l'égalité entre les hommes et les femmes adoptée en 2021, des réformes législatives majeures ont renforcé la protection des victimes de violences de genre, notamment l'adaptation de la définition pénale du viol et l'inscription du stalking dans le code pénal. En novembre prochain, nous lancerons une campagne nationale contre la violence de genre avec un message clair: l'égalité protège contre la violence. À travers sa politique étrangère, la Suisse s'engage pour garantir l'universalité des droits des femmes et l'égalité de genre, en priorité la participation économique et politique des femmes et la lutte contre la violence basée sur le genre. Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, les crises récentes ont entraîné un recul en matière d'égalité des genres. En effet, les acquis des dernières décennies sont aujourd'hui menacés dans plusieurs pays. Or, des solutions ont été formulées depuis longtemps dans différents instruments multilatéraux. Aujourd'hui, nous devons nous appuyer sur ce cadre normatif international et nous engager pour sa mise en œuvre. C'est là le meilleur moyen de protéger les individus et d'assurer le développement des sociétés égalitaires. La démocratie et la prospérité économique en dépendent. Ensemble, transformons la vision de Beijing en réalité. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. I give the floor now to Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi Naitwa, President of the Republic of Namibia.
Madam President, gender equality and women empowerment have been key priorities for Namibia's government since our independence in 1990. We have shown strong political will through adopting international commitments, including the Beijing Declaration and the Platform of Action, which are domesticated in our national gender policy. 30 years ago in Beijing, we affirmed that women's rights were indeed human rights. Since then, Namibia has always built on the strong foundation of this declaration to draw a strong link on issues related to women and development and access. Our progress in the area of political inclusion and legal frame are grounded in this and underpinned our deep commitment to achieve progress for empowerment of women. As a result of this, Namibia closed 81.1% of its gender gap, ranking 8th globally and first in Africa as per the 2025 World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap reports. As President, I'm happy to highlight our historical milestone. Namibia now has a female president, vice president, Speaker of the National Assembly, and Secretary General of the SWAPO Party, the ruling party in Namibia. And women hold 57% of the cabinet, including key ministries such as finance, health, education, international relations and trade. Madam President, as we reflect on our progress, we are also aware that our work is far from to be done. There are areas where there is room for improvement, particularly in the area of economics. In our national context, this is mainly in the area of economic inclusion of women in many economic activities such as mining, fishery, oil and gas, particularly rural women who still remain in the margin of the economic activities. Economic challenge persists across the many sectors, so much that we have to do a lot, particularly in the informal sector, to bring women to the par.
Madam President, thank you. I thank you very much, Madam President. And also congratulations to Namibia. And just in case you hear again, we couldn't find a woman, call the government or the president of Namibia. They could advise you. So the next on the list, I have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Dina Ercilia Boluarte Segarra, President of the Republic of Peru.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Han transcurrido 30 años desde la adopción de la Declaración y Plataforma de Acción de Beijing, un hito histórico que marcó el compromiso político internacional más importante para alcanzar el empoderamiento de todas las mujeres, adolescentes y niñas y el pleno ejercicio de sus derechos humanos en condiciones de igualdad. Desde entonces, hemos alcanzado resultados relevantes. Se han reducido las brechas en el acceso a la educación y el mercado laboral. Un número creciente de mujeres accede a espacios de toma de decisión y se han fortalecido las normas para combatir la violencia, la discriminación contra las mujeres. Sin embargo, Presidenta, aún persisten brechas estructurales que limitan el desarrollo de las mujeres y las niñas. pues la pobreza extrema y la multidimensional, la discriminación y la violencia nos siguen afectando desproporcionadamente. Frente a ello, el Perú toma acciones decididas. En el año 2019 se aprobó la Política Nacional de Igualdad de Género, cuyos objetivos prioritarios son garantizar a las mujeres el ejercicio de todos sus derechos, erradicar la violencia contra ellas, empoderarlas y superar las barreras institucionales y socioculturales que enfrentan. Contamos con más de 400 centros de emergencia mujer a nivel nacional que actúan con un enfoque intercultural para atender casos de violencia contra las mujeres y poner fin a este flagelo. Financiamos con recursos públicos proyectos para afianzar la autonomía económica de las mujeres. Apuntamos a reconocer legalmente el derecho al cuidado y a crear un sistema nacional de cuidados para garantizar este derecho, así como acreditar y certificar las competencias de las personas cuidadoras, muchas de cuales son mujeres. Trabajamos para garantizar el acceso de las mujeres a una educación de calidad, así como para promover una mayor inclusión laboral e incrementar su participación política en todos los niveles de gobierno. Y con mucho orgullo informo que el matrimonio infantil fue abolido en el año 2023. Señora Presidenta, como la primera mujer presidenta en más de
Muchas gracias. Madam President. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, and also to you, congratulations for being the first female president. And may I remind all speakers and maybe also all delegation to look at the script again. I'm very sorry for that one, but we have so many presidents and prime ministers speaking in a row. The next I may introduce is Her Excellency Nataša Pirc-Musar, President of the Republic of Slovenia.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, we need to face a difficult truth. Progress on gender equity has been uneven, and many of our hard-won gains are now at risk. Sexual and gender-based violence, economic inequality, a lack of sexual and reproductive rights, political underrepresentation, and the systemic discrimination of women persist. Real change requires making gender equity a genuine priority, including in peace and security. If not now, when? At a time when the world is facing a record number of conflicts. Conflicts that claim a devastating number of civilian lives, as in Gaza, where 2/3 of the victims are women and children. Simply put, the inclusion of women is a guarantee for peace. It is also high time that the UN's leadership reflects the diversity of the people it serves. This calls for bold action from all of us to nominate, support, and elect women to the highest offices, both here at the UN and in our own countries as well. After 80 years, the United Nations must lead by example. We cannot afford to miss yet another chance to appoint the first woman Secretary General, nor we can afford to move forward into a future where still only 6% of General Assembly presidents are women. Let me be clear. The issue has never been about merit. There are plenty smart and capable women. What is lacking is the will to open doors. Dear all, let us invest in women's leadership and ensure that every girl can live a life of opportunity. I know that women and girls in Afghanistan, Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Haiti, and beyond are counting on us. And let me just conclude. My husband is a proud feminist. I am a proud feminist. And I am battling this battle not to say that the men need less. I'm not doing this for that. I just want the girls to have the same opportunities. And we need men to help us. And just to conclude with a couple of numbers, do you know how many presidents we have, female presidents we have in European Union? 2, in Malta and in Slovenia. Do you know how many presidents we have here in United Nations out of 193 members? 16. Those are the numbers. Thank you. And
I thank Her Excellency, Madam President, and again also congratulations to you being the first in that role. I give the floor now to His Excellency Daniel Francesco Chapo, President of the Republic of Mozambique.
Senhora Presidente da Assembleia Geral, Senhora Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas, Excelências, antes da intervenção, queria dizer que estou aqui para salvar a honra dos homens que estão nesta sala, porque desde que começaram as intervenções, só vejo mulheres a fazer a intervenção. Daí que há necessidade também de homens falarem sobre este assunto. É uma honra poder dirigir-me a esta magna Assembleia, no ano em que celebramos o 30º aniversário da Declaração e Plataforma de Ação de Beijing. Nesta oportunidade, quero reafirmar o compromisso inabalável de Moçambique com o empoderamento das mulheres. E é por isso que a implementação da Agenda de Beijing definimos 2 áreas prioritárias para todas as mulheres e raparigas, a saber, liberdade da pobreza, através da promoção de acesso a recursos produtivos e oportunidades econômicas. 0 violência, com foco particular na erradicação do feminicídio e de todas as formas de violência baseada no género. Excelências, desde Beijing alcançamos a paridade do género no Conselho de Ministros e no Parlamento. Quase 50% de raparigas no nosso país estão matriculadas em todos os níveis de ensino. Aumentamos o número de partos institucionais de 48% para 65%. Temos mulheres em lugares de liderança nos órgãos centrais de soberania do Estado moçambicano, tais como Primeira-Ministra, Presidente da Assembleia da República, Presidente do Conselho Constitucional, Presidente do Tribunal Administrativo, entre outros avanços significativos alcançados nas lideranças de nível local. Ainda criamos mais de 30 centros de atendimento integrado para combater a violência do género. Contudo, ainda enfrentamos enormes desafios. 44% das nossas raparigas estão em uniões prematuras, 68% foram vítimas de violência baseada no género e 27% de mulheres continuam desempregadas. Cientes das novas fronteiras de desigualdade que estão a emergir com a inteligência artificial e tecnologias digitais, que afetam de forma desproporcional a empregabilidade das mulheres, Moçambique está a integrar nos currículos e a promover o acesso das raparigas às ciências e tecnologias,
Thank you, Mr. President. Obrigado, and I thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Mozambique. I give the floor now to Her Excellency Hilda Hein, President of the Republic of Marshall Islands.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, Yahweh. 30 years ago, Ambassador Nay John Edwards, now happily retired, led a delegation of Marshallese women to the Beijing Conference of Women. That conference changed our life and generations of Marshallese women ever since. Since the Beijing Declaration, gender is now a core pillar of our national planning. As a small island developing state, we are not moving fast enough with island-tailored strategies. In a nation where 1 out of 2 women experience violence, and in a Pacific Island region with the lowest rate of women in elected government in the world. Core efforts need to be strengthened, including in our families and communities. We can build on our traditional matrilineal customs to encourage the role of women as peace builders, as human rights defenders, and contemporary leaders in their fields. While the Marshall Islands has instituted important legal reforms, rates of gender-based violence remain unacceptably high. Education, police officer training, and crisis services have been key steps. We will continue to ensure the full recognition and realization of human rights for women and girls, including through our recent ratification of the Palermo Protocol on Trafficking. The health of women and girls is a key priority and is written in our survival story, where the nuclear legacy has left behind cancers, reproductive health struggles, and the unseen weight of caregiving. We answer this with urgency, expanding maternal care and family planning, and launching mass cervical cancer screening and prevention so that every woman and girls has the chance to live and to lead. Women's economic empowerment is vital to achieving equality. Through the Marshall Islands CAREF Fund, a national financing initiative that supports women's entrepreneurship and access to capital, we are opening pathways to women to drive innovation, recognizing when women prosper, nation prosper. Our national early childhood development framework has forged key progress in direct interventions to provide assistance, nutrition, and care for vulnerable communities, including expectant mothers and mothers of young children. This will be expanded for universal coverage to address crisis levels of malnutrition and stunting. We welcome the region's new policy launch to incorporate climate and resilience in the framework. Madam
I thank you, Madam President. I now have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Gordana Siljanovska-Davkova, President of the Republic of North Macedonia.
Distinguished Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago, in Beijing, the nations of the world made a solemn pledge to advance women's rights and human rights, to achieve gender equality, and to empower every woman and girl to live free from violence, discrimination, and limitation. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action remain a cornerstone of international law, a living testament that equality for women is both justice and a prerequisite for peace, prosperity, and sustainable development. And yet, 3 decades on, we must admit progress has been uneven, fragile, and too often reversible. Violence against women persists with impunity, femicide desecrates the sanctity of life, and structural barriers still deny women leadership, resources, and decision-making power. These are not abstractions. They would wound families, societies, and generations. At the same time, the very institution created to safeguard peace, the United Nations faces a profound crisis. Conceived as the greatest peace project of humankind, it is now stands against a backdrop of wars raging across continents. 80 years after its founding, peace, the raison d'etre of the UN, remain elusive. Mars still rules when it is time for Venus, embodied in the vision, compassion, and leadership of women, to guide our common future. If we are serious about peace, then the time has come to entrust the helm of the United Nations to a woman. We, the women of the world, together with the children, are the first and greatest victims of war. But we are also the bearers of healing, compassion, and hope. Gender equality is not a feminist privilege. It is a humanist imperative. We do not ask for favors, not for matriarchy, but for a just order in which the talents and creativity of half of humanity are fully recognized for the advancement of politics, science, health, education, and peace. Excellencies, the Beijing Declaration called on us to ensure equal rights and equal access for women and men, girls and boys. That call remains urgent today. Only together, women and men, do we embody the full renew our commitment.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. I thank you, Madam President, and now I give the floor to His Excellency Berjam Begay, President of the Republic of Albania.
Madam President, Excellencies, it's my pleasure to present at the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Conference an important platform in the global efforts for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Today serves as an opportunity to renew our collective commitment and to give fresh impetus to the full implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. We have made significant strides in ensuring women's participation in political, economic, and social life. Yet, with only 5 years left to achieve SDGs, progress on gender equality is stagnating and in some areas is regressing. We must reverse this trend. This meeting must serve as a turning point, moving beyond the rhetoric to action. We must mobilize adequate financial resources, reinforce accountability frameworks, and invest in measurable and transformative actions. Albania is ready to share its experience. Over the past decade, we have undertaken substantial legal, institutional, and societal reforms aimed at promoting gender equality. Albania has closed the gender gap in education, strengthened women's economic participation, and invested in digital inclusion and entrepreneurship for women and girls. These reforms have been shaped in consultation with civil society and the youth, making gender equality an important aspect of our society. To us, gender equality is essential to sustainable development, social cohesion, and shared prosperity. Albania has pledged two priorities under the Beijing Plus 30 Action Agenda. First, to intensify efforts to eliminate violence against women, and second, to expand the application of gender-responsible budgeting. At a time when conflicts and crises are multiplying, the world needs the leadership and contribution of women more than ever. Their role is fundamental in building peace, preventing conflict, and creating more inclusive and resilient societies. Albania reaffirmed its full commitment to the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, to the 2030 Agenda, and to international human rights instruments. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency President of the Republic of Albania. I have the honor to give the floor to His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos titres et qualités, il y a 30 ans, la déclaration et la plateforme d'action de Beijing ont tracé une feuille de route ambitieuse pour parvenir à l'égalité des sexes et à l'autonomisation de toutes les femmes et filles. Aujourd'hui, alors que nous célébrons cet anniversaire, nous devons faire preuve de lucidité, de volonté et d'engagement renouvelé, car malgré les avancées notables de ces dernières années, nous constatons aujourd'hui un recul préoccupant des droits des femmes. Les conflits armés, les crises climatiques et les mouvements rétrogrades mettent en péril nos acquis fondamentaux. La résolution 1325 du Conseil de sécurité, adoptée il y a 25 ans, a posé un jalon essentiel. Lorsque les femmes participent au processus de paix et sont présentes à la table des négociations, les accords qui en résultent sont plus inclusifs et la paix a davantage de chances de perdurer. La principauté de Monaco est convaincue que l'inclusion des femmes est non seulement une nécessité, mais aussi une condition de stabilité et de prospérité durable. Fidèle à son attachement aux droits humains et à la dignité de chacun, Monaco a toujours soutenu les efforts internationaux visant à faire progresser l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes. Tant sur son territoire qu'au travers de sa coopération internationale, la principauté œuvre activement pour promouvoir l'accès des filles à l'éducation, l'autonomie économique des femmes, mais aussi la lutte contre toutes les formes de violence, y compris dans les contextes de conflits et de crise. Le comité monégasque pour la promotion et la protection des droits des femmes a été créé en 2018. Il est aujourd'hui la pierre angulaire de la mobilisation et de la sensibilisation au niveau national. Le gouvernement princier collabore étroitement avec des agences des Nations Unies, telles qu'ONU Femmes, et son cadre Sport pour Génération Égalité, qui reconnaît le rôle du sport comme levier puissant de transformation sociale. La principauté est fière de soutenir cette initiative, convaincue que le sport peut être un vecteur d'émancipation, de respect et de solidarité. L'UNICEF et le FUNAP sont également des partenaires essentiels dans notre action au travers de projets concrets. Ces partenariats permettent d'ancrer des principes de la déclaration de Beijing dans des actions de terrain. Je tiens également à souligner le rôle essentiel de la société civile, des femmes leaders, des jeunes et des hommes alliés dans la construction d'un monde plus juste, plus solidaire et véritablement égalitaire. Monaco réaffirme son engagement à poursuivre ce chemin avec détermination aux côtés de toutes celles et ceux qui œuvrent chaque jour pour que cette égalité devienne réalité. Je vous remercie.
I thank His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco, Sovereign Prince of the Principality of Monaco. And I have the honor now to give the floor to His Excellency Assali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros.
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée, honorables assistances, Mesdames et Messieurs, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. C'est pour moi un grand honneur, un réel plaisir de prendre la parole en ce moment solennel à l'occasion du 30e anniversaire de la 4e conférence mondiale sur les femmes. Cet anniversaire est l'occasion de dresser un bilan de progrès accomplis depuis la conférence historique de Pékin en 1995, mais aussi de mettre en lumière les réalisations, les meilleures pratiques, ainsi que les défis persistants dans la promotion de l'égalité des genres à travers le monde. Fidèle à ses engagements internationaux et régionaux, l'Union des Comores a ratifié plusieurs instruments juridiques pertinents pour la protection et la promotion des droits des femmes, notamment la Convention sur l'élimination de toutes les formes de discrimination à l'égard des femmes. Et durant la présidence comorienne de l'Union africaine, j'ai eu l'honneur de porter le flambeau de cette cause essentielle. C'est dans ce cadre que, le 30 octobre 2023, notre pays a organisé la troisième conférence de consultation des femmes leaders africaines sur les thèmes « Stimuler l'engagement en faveur de l'autonomisation économique des femmes et mettre fin à la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles ». Sur le plan national, la Constitution comorienne a toujours garanti les droits des femmes en les protégeant contre la violence, l'exploitation, l'abandon et contre toutes sortes de violences. De nombreuses réformes législatives et institutionnelles ont été adoptées, parmi lesquelles le nouveau code pénal intégrant des dispositions pour la protection des femmes et des enfants. Et plus récemment, en 2024, la création des ministères dédiés à la promotion des genres, à la solidarité, à l'information, à laquelle il y a une femme qui m'a donné l'autorisation de venir parler aujourd'hui. Le gouvernement comorien a mis en place une politique nationale d'égalité du genre et développé des mécanismes de prise en charge médicale, juridique et psychologique pour les victimes de violences basées sur le genre. Une réinsertion scolaire et professionnelle est également proposée aux filles mères victimes de violences. La création d'Africa Women Leaders Network, réseau des femmes leaders africains et d'une plateforme pour le leadership féminin, l'implication active des autorités locales et communautaires et des leaders religieux. Depuis mon accession à la magistrature suprême, j'ai placé la participation des femmes aux instances de décision politique au cœur de nos priorités. Aujourd'hui, des femmes occupent des responsabilités, notamment au sein du gouvernement, du Parlement, des institutions juridiques et judiciaires.
Excellency, Excellency, kindly conclude your statement. I thank His Excellency, the President of the Union of Comoros, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Bassirou Diomaye Diakhar Faye, President of the Republic of Senegal.
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée générale, Madame la Vice-secrétaire générale, chers collègues, Mesdames, Messieurs, je remercie la Présidente de l'Assemblée générale et le Secrétariat général pour la convocation de cette réunion. Nous sommes là pour appeler à la poursuite de l'action et à la mobilisation des ressources afin d'accélérer la marche pour l'égalité parfaite des sexes et l'autonomisation de toutes les femmes et de toutes les filles. Le programme d'action de Beijing a été un tournant dans la prise de conscience sur l'obligation d'être plus juste vis-à-vis de toutes les femmes. Des progrès ont été accomplis, mais ils méritent d'être évalués régulièrement pour identifier nos faiblesses et apporter les ajustements qui permettent d'instaurer une société plus équitable et plus inclusive. L'engagement à promouvoir l'égalité des sexes et les droits des femmes signifie lutter contre la pauvreté, garantir leur accès aux ressources économiques, à l'éducation et à la santé, accroître leur participation aux instances de décision et les protéger contre toutes les formes de violence et de discrimination. C'est ce que nous faisons au Sénégal à travers nos politiques publiques et la vision Sénégal 2050 qui place les femmes et les jeunes au cœur de la citoyenneté et de la stabilité nationale. Nous mettons en œuvre un accélérateur de progrès pour lever les obstacles persistants à l'égalité, avec des programmes pour élargir l'accès des filles et des femmes à l'éducation et à la formation, et combattre sans relâche toutes les violences basées sur le genre. Le combat contre toute forme de violence et de discrimination contre les femmes et les filles doit se poursuivre avec véhémence. Rien dans l'histoire, ni dans la religion ou dans la vie sociale ne peut justifier qu'une femme ou une fille soit violentée, marginalisée, discriminée. Tous ensemble, pouvoir public, membres de la société civile, leaders religieux et traditionnels, les citoyens tout court, nous devons plus que jamais nous mobiliser contre la brutalité, le harcèlement, le viol et les insanités de tout genre. Ensemble, surmontons les inégalités persistantes.
And then I read the press intro to Kubra's package. Yeah. Yes, and then after that we go to the chorus, Hassan Abdullah, Manuel Roida, and Shadi Edward Dusty, and then we are done. Okay, let us know while we are, let the director know and they will inform us. And what is the package about? Is it about Gaza? Reaction. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Can I tell you can you take notes quickly? Can I tell you very quickly? Because I can't send the questions, they're on my iPad. I don't have WhatsApp on my iPad. Okay, so for Paul, for Peter Allen, the question is France was among the first countries to lead this new wave of recognition. Or just very simply, how is this recognition playing out domestically, and what message is Paris trying to send to the international community? That's for Peter Allen. Then for London, Paul Hawkins, with the UK now formally recognizing Palestine, what political pressure and debates are you seeing over there in the UK right now, especially given Britain's historic ties to Israel? Then for Brussels, Brian Carter, Brussels is at the heart of the European Union policy making. How could peace recognition shape broader European actions on Palestine? And for Washington, Craig Boswell, with Washington standing firm on its veto, how is the US responding to this mounting international pressure? Yeah, one question. For Hassan Abdullah, he'll be totally fine. I think I know you can ask anything to him. And he's after Erdogan's package. And Bogota, Manuel right now, about Latin America, we already spoke with him about it. Like, what's the significance of these recognition for Latin Americans? Because Latin American historically is very pro-Palestine. And then for Shadi and Tashi, again, reaction from the ground in occupied Israel. All right, so I think we're all set. What is she talking about in that video? Okay, perfect. She just uses this reason. Okay, perfect. And mountain package is also about her. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okie dokes. Alright, sounds good. I think we're all set. For now, we're good. Thanks so much. Bye. Bye-bye. Take care. Package in the end. Good afternoon. So when you come out, right where the wall is, there's a cut
Ambassador. How are you?
I'm live.
Oh, sorry.
Instead of like the same old basic, thank you very much. Flags. Well, you know, we got to be the yeah. So good. Yeah, I don't think it's authorized. They're like, oh, we didn't tell you to do that, but watches as Trump comes. I don't have to show Trump, I can show you.
Yeah, I'm looking for your position. I'm at the corner of 1st and 46. I don't know if okay, good. You're not there. Okay, so no problem. I can wait a second because you have yes, yes, yes.
for a chocolate? Why not? You're welcome.
Tony. Be careful, I'm live. We missed you with the, Hey there. When do you guys go up? What? Oh, that's the plan.
Plan is for a half-hour show, but
Wow, half hour. Prime time or no?
I saw exactly. There was a miscommunication. But if you also want to come
wait till Friday. I live in the city. There are I did the October 13th last year.
wow.
I think they're going to come from all over the world. Especially America. They're already organizing. They have like that's just Tuesday night to take time.
Right.
I saw the flyer.
Alright, that sounds nuts. I guess anything.
They don't want to work for them.
I was saying that too. Some friends
I don't know.
yeah.
I live orada.